2020 has been anything but a normal year in any of our lives. Within all of this abnormality, we tend to cling to things that remind us of the old and the familiar. Some of these underpinnings of our normal lives as we near this holiday season include things like pumpkin spice lattes, holiday music, Christmas movies, and of course, snow globes. A while back, I had this crazy thought, and that was some of your favorite adventures have a lot in common with the design principles of snow globes. Adventure design and snow globe design have a big overlap in terms of how things are constructed and how things work. So let's go into a few of those design principles in this video today. Every single snow globe out there has a base. Now, this could be a simple base of just plain plastic, or it could be a decorative base kind of like this one. And it presents the overall theme of the snow globe as well, at least in the case of the decorative ones. Now, adventures have a base just like snow globes do. The base for an adventure is its narrative, the underpinnings of the whole thing, the big idea, if you will. Whether it's a death curse that is pervading the entire world, or a city being dragged down to hell, or the players having to escape the realm of a despotic vampire overlord, every single adventure that you run and play has a narrative base. Some sort of story, some through line. Everything that is built inside of the adventure is based on that narrative base. They all harken back to it, they tie into it, they interweave through it. There is very little in an adventure that is way off in left field and has nothing to do with the overall narrative. In the world, there are millions, if not billions, of snow globes out there, and I can guarantee you that almost all of them focus on a single theme, some sort of scene or some idea that they're trying to put forth through their design, through their scenery. It could be a Christmas-themed snow globe. It could be happy birthday. It could be a city. Anything. You won't see a whole bunch of stuff jumbled into one snow globe. They've got a focus to their design, much like adventures do. Unlike snow globes, adventures aren't just one thing. They're more than just this one scene that's being portrayed in a snow globe. They're made up of a lot of different constituent parts that all work together to provide a fun and engaging experience for the players. These are quests, locations, NPCs, encounters, all that good stuff that we've come to know and love. All of it meshes together to provide one cohesive experience that is centered around that narrative base that we mentioned earlier. Each one of these small parts of an adventure can portray their own idea. They can have their own themes or scenes that you want to play out. For example, let's take the locations that you'll find in some of the published modules. In Descent into Avernus, you have Baldur's Gate. The theme of Baldur's Gate is prosperity mixed with corruption. It's this corruption that is dooming the city and really setting the adventure in motion. Just south of there, you have Candlekeep. The theme of Candlekeep is scholarly knowledge, and it is that scholarly knowledge that allows your party to figure out what they have to do next, how they can get into Avernus. Those two locations have very different themes, but they all serve the overall narrative. They serve the base of the adventure. The corruption kicks off the adventure. The scholarly knowledge moves it forward. All of your themes in your adventure, all of the ideas that your individual encounters and locations and NPCs portray should work to serve the overall narrative and keep things moving forward. Do you see this little guy right here, Santa? He's not going anywhere. He can see the world outside, but he can't reach it. He can't touch it. He's surrounded by this little glass globe. He's encapsulated it in his own little world, and he can't move outside of it. He can witness it, but he can't affect it. This principle of encapsulation, as I call it, can be seen all the time in existing adventures. Look through your favorite adventure, and I guarantee you're gonna see it at least once or twice, probably a lot if your adventure has a lot of NPCs. All of these NPCs will usually only be mentioned in the context of their immediate area, the town or place that you find them in. In a tabletop gaming adventure, players can do pretty much anything they want. They have freedom of choice, freedom of movement, freedom of murdering everyone in sight. Whatever they can do, probably somebody will do. Now that puts a big variable in front of designers. How do you know that Bob NPC from Town 1 will be present 10 sessions later when the players are in Town 2? You cannot predict that. Bob NPC might be dead. Bob NPC might be off leading a resistance. You don't know what your players are gonna make Bob do. One of the ways that designers can get around this problematic variable of players is by encapsulating the individual pieces of their adventure. Within that bubble, the NPC lives and thrives and can take actions to change things. But outside of that bubble, they might as not well exist. Let's take Lost Mine of Phandelver, for instance. Now, in the town of Phandelver, Harbin Wester is basically the mayor. He's a big, important guy. But if your party kills him, that has absolutely no effect on what will happen at Cragmaw Castle or Wave Echo Cave, at least as written. The two are entirely separated. Harbin is encapsulated within the town of Phandalin. This same encapsulation should be used in your own adventure design to keep your party from breaking the adventure just by killing the wrong NPC, for example. Everybody has to be kept in their own little bubble and separated from the other constituent parts of your adventure. The more interconnected the pieces of your adventure are, the more brittle it becomes, the more conditional logic that you have to write into the adventure itself. Not only does that make your adventure longer and harder to read through, it makes it harder to run. You can't have a bunch of if, then, else chains in your adventure and still have people play it fluidly. All of these constituent parts of your adventure, your locations, your NPCs, should live inside of their own little bubbles, their own snow globes, if you will. They can view the world outside. They know what's going on, but they generally don't venture out of their bubble to affect the world. They're not interlinked with other locations and other NPCs. Take a look at some of your favorite adventures and you'll see this in action all the time. Let's take a look at Curse of Strahd, for example, because that's the module that I've covered the most. Irina, the central NPC to the entire game, is only mentioned in depth in one chapter. She gets a few footnote mentions in other chapters, but there's nothing that really depends on her being with the party or even being alive. This is the central NPC, mind you. Strahd is after her, and that's his whole shtick. But the module does not assume that she's with you. It doesn't assume that she's alive. It just says, here's a place, here's what's happening, and it doesn't care who you have with you. It doesn't care who else is alive outside of the immediate area. When you tip a snow globe over, all of the snow, or whatever that is in there, it goes swirling around, to and fro, round and round. It's a lot of fun to watch. If you look closely, you'll notice that you can never ever predict the path of any one particle. There's a lot of randomness in there. There's a lot of different particles acting upon one another, and there's water swirling around inside. There's no predictability to any of it. All of that unpredictability provides a unique experience every single time you tip over the snow globe. But what if you could predict it? How would you even do that? You could have a very thin tube instead of a big globe, and then you just turn it over and then the snow falls down to the bottom. You turn it over again and it falls down the other direction. It's all very predictable, but it doesn't sound like a lot of fun, does it? If you have any luck as a designer, more than one person is going to play your adventure. Hopefully it's played worldwide by thousands of people. If it's played by more than one person at least, you can't ever really predict what those people are gonna do. There's too many variables at play. Just like with the snow globe, you can't predict the particles unless you really constrict their movement down to that tiny tube that I had just mentioned previously. You can do something very similar by providing a linear adventure experience for players. You might want to do that, you might not want to do that. It's entirely up to you, it's your adventure. But if you're going to provide a more open experience that is traditionally expected in tabletop gaming adventures, then you have to account for the unpredictability of players. Players are the biggest variable at play in adventure design. You have no idea where they're going to go, what they're going to do, who they're going to talk to, or maybe even what equipment they have with them. You don't know how many there are going to be in a party. You don't know what racial makeup they're going to have. Is it all bards? Is it all orcs? Is it all half-elves? Is it all fighters? You don't know. All of that uncertainty means that you have to not make assumptions. You can't have a quest that hinges on the party having a wizard. Or if you do make a quest that hinges on a party having a wizard, you have to provide a wizard for them just in case they don't have one. That party of fighters is going to be locked out of that quest unless you provide them a way to achieve their goal, to get that wizard, or otherwise have some magical capabilities to solve whatever problem needs solving. These lack of assumptions are going to make your adventure much more widely acceptable, much more playable worldwide, and it's going to be a huge step in achieving success for your adventure.